welcome viewers. I'm Pia and you're watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines this hour. US President Donald Trump has held high-level talks with Blair and Kushner on post-war Gaza plans, even as Israel is intensifying pressure on Gaza City. This comes as Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Saar has met Marco Rubio in Washington. As reports of starvation raise concerns in Gaza, the United Nations, a fresh report has now claimed that Gaza's famine is man-made. Israel, meanwhile, has rejected these claims and called for the removal of the UN statement. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has stated that his officials will meet representatives of US President Donald Trump in New York this week as part of intensified mediation efforts aimed at ending the ongoing war with Russia. Meanwhile, US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff has stated that he will also be present for the meeting that is going to take place tomorrow. Emmanuel Macron, Friedrich Merz and Donald Tusk are to meet President Sandu on Moldova's Independence Day. The leaders have pledged strong support for the country's path towards joining the European Union, stating that the door to Europe remains wide open. US envoy Tom Barrack has cancelled his trip to Southern Lebanon after Hezbollah supporters protested his visit. This comes amid Hezbollah's disarmament talks that the Lebanese government is holding with the US. Two children aged 8 and 10 have been killed and 17 people injured in a shooting in Minneapolis in the United States. A gunman opened fire on school children attending a mass at a Catholic school. Authorities call the attack an act of domestic terrorism and a hate crime targeting Catholics. Tehran has warned that any move to trigger snapback sanctions directly affects cooperation with the IAEA, while it stresses that the return of inspectors does not mean full resumption of ties. French Prime Minister Bayrou has warned against snap legislative polls. He has compared the country's finances to a leaky boat. Meanwhile, French President Emmanuel Macron has defended his government and offered full support to the embattled Prime Minister, who has a minority government. All right, viewers, those are the headlines, and our top focus this hour is on what's transpiring in the Middle East. The United Nations Security Council members, except the United States, have declared the famine in Gaza a man-made crisis. They've urged Israel to lift all restrictions on aid and allow immediate humanitarian access. Let's in fact listen in to what are the representatives of these countries has had to say.
We will also take this occasion to reject the falsehood that there is a policy of starvation in Gaza. Since the beginning of the war in Gaza, Israel has enabled an unprecedented amount of more than 2 million tons of aid to flow into the Gaza Strip. We are working closely with the government of Israel to increase the flow of aid without benefiting Hamas and are seeing tangible results. Instead of echoing false narratives which only embolden Hamas, prolong the war, and hurt civilians in Gaza, we urge the UN and the rest of this council to join us in working constructively to deliver aid to civilians that doesn't benefit Hamas.
Meanwhile, Israel has strongly rejected this UN-backed report declaring that the famine is already present in Gaza, demanding the Global Hunger Monitor immediately retract the findings, calling them biased and based on flawed data. Let's in fact listen in to what Eden Bartal has said.
Demands that the IPC will retract immediately its fabricated report and publish a notice.
Meanwhile, in a testimony to the Council, Save the Children NGO has described the toll on Gaza's youngest, saying that starving children are now so weak they do not even have the energy to cry. Listen in.
This is starvation as a method of war in its darkest terms. Save the Children's clinics in Gaza are overwhelmed by need, every bench packed with malnourished children and their mothers. Yet our clinics are almost silent now. Children do not have the strength to speak or even cry out in agony. They lie there, emaciated, quite literally wasting away. Their tiny bodies overcome by hunger and disease. The medical and specialized nutrition supplies they need all but used up.
Meanwhile, the United Kingdom's ambassador to the UN has called the famine entirely man-made and a moral outrage, joining calls for immediate action. Algeria's ambassador also held up photos of starving children and a slain journalist, blaming Israel for deepening the crisis in Gaza. He's described a 3-month-old who died drinking only water and a niece. Israel's envoy, meanwhile, has sharply rejected these claims, urging fact-checking and accusing Algeria of politicizing a tragedy. This is the latest that we are tracking from the Middle East. Meanwhile, joining us on the broadcast is Dr. Punsara Amarasinghe Kotalwala. He's a defense expert from the Defense University in Colombo in Sri Lanka. Thank you so much for taking our time sitting with us on NewsX. What's transpiring in Gaza? The UNSC members are now agreeing that it is a man-made crisis, that the famine is a man-made crisis, and all except the United States have backed the UN statement that has come out. It still seems that Trump administration is standing staunchly behind Netanyahu.
Yes, as you stated, except the United States, rest of the members in United Nations Security Council have unanimously admitted that it is a tremendously man-made crisis, wherein you can see the Israeli government keeps stating that it is an engineered crisis. The famine is an engineered crisis. Whatever the circumstances would be, we need to understand that next few days can be highly decisive, as the former envoy of the British government to the Middle East, Mr. Tony Blair, is supposed to meet President Trump in the Washington, D.C., which can perhaps change the game in the Middle East. But having said that, I must confess that besides the famine, Netanyahu's government has not stepped down from the strong military actions. Last week, Netanyahu's government received its approval from the cabinet to crush the entire Gaza city hold. So on Wednesday, they made it quite clear that the citizens' evacuation from Gaza city is inevitable as the Israeli offensive is moving ahead to crush the entire the city hold. So with all these the trajectories which we are seeing in Gaza war front, the famine is a living tragedy. It is still ongoing. But the only issue that we need to understand in the long run is to which extent international community can pressurize without the support from Trump administration. I mean, as you know that for the past few months, Trump administration has not taken any offensive stances to prevent this ongoing tragedy in the Middle East, which is quite pathetic.
Indeed, you've spoken about international pressure, but pressure on Netanyahu is two-pronged at this point. There's also a lot of domestic discontent, especially with regards to his offensive in Gaza, because the people are concerned, within Israel are concerned for the hostages, and they say that the lives of the hostages are also in danger as the offensive is not quelling and Netanyahu is pushing for it. Do you think domestic concerns, domestic discontent and the demonstrations that we've been seeing over the last couple of days within Israel could move Netanyahu?
Yes, I think since what happened on the 7th of October, the domestic content, the public reception in Israel has always been fluctuating. Even within his political party, the Likud party, who are adamantly the pro-nationalist, the pro-Jewish members, have taken more serious steps against Netanyahu's government, condemning Netanyahu's inability of upholding the internal security of the state of Israel. And yes, as you precisely identified, the question on the hostages seems to be the moot point in the entire episode related to the Middle East. At the moment, A number of hostages are still in Gaza, still under the possession of, under the custody of the Hamas terrorists. So when they are going to move ahead with this crushing offensive towards the Gaza city limits, of course, there are obvious concerns about their safety emanating from the Israel public opinion, because most of the relatives and the acquaintances and the friends of those hostages keep demonstrating against Netanyahu's government in streets of Jerusalem and also in Tel Aviv, which can simply pressurize the internal political structure of Benjamin Netanyahu's government, which is anyway at stake.
All right, sir, I request you to stay on with us because we're shifting focus to some other crucial developments coming in. Australia has now accused Iran and given 7 days to its ambassador to leave the country over alleged anti-Semitic attacks in Sydney and Melbourne. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has stated that the intelligence services linked Iran to an arson attack on a cafe in Sydney in October last year and another on a synagogue in Melbourne in December. Let's in fact hear what the Australian Prime Minister had to say.
Since the terrible events of October 7, 2023, we have witnessed a number of appalling anti-Semitic attacks against Australia's Jewish community. I've made it clear that these sorts of incidents have no place in Australia and that I wanted ASIO and the AFP to investigate as a priority. ASIO has now gathered enough credible intelligence to reach a deeply disturbing conclusion that the Iranian government directed at least 2 of these attacks.
There is no doubt that these extraordinary and dangerous acts of aggression orchestrated by a foreign nation on Australian soil have crossed a line. And that is why we have declared Iran's ambassador to Australia persona non grata, as well as 3 other Iranian officials, and they will have 7 days to leave the country.
What do you have to say to the Australian public? Mr. Ambassador, just for a moment, we just want to have to say what do you have to say?
I love, Australian people. I love Australian people.
Do you believe that Iran are behind these attacks?
Just I love Australian people. Bye-bye.
Mr. Ambassador.
All right, there of course we've heard what Anthony Albanese, Australian Prime Minister, as well as what Penny Wong, Australian Foreign Minister, has had to say. The Iranian ambassador, Ahmed Sadeghi, only had to say that he has love for the Australian people. Meanwhile, Iran has denied its role in these anti-Semitic arson attacks and has threatened reciprocal action after the envoy's expulsion. Let's in fact hear what Ismail Baqai, Iran's foreign ministry spokesperson, had to say.
اجازه ندهیم این موضوع تبدیل به یک ابزار جنگ روانی علیه ذهن و روح شهروندانمون بشه. قاعدتاً هر کنش نامناسبی و ناموجهی در سطح دیپلماتیک واکنش متقابلی رو در پی خواهد داشت. این تحول جدید هست. همکاران من مشغول بررسی موضوع و تصمیم گیری در مورد نحوه پاسخ ما هستند. اما اتهامی که مطرح شده مطلقاً مردود هست.
Meanwhile, Iran's foreign minister has stated that Australia's prime minister is a weak politician, claiming that Canberra's moves, including labelling the IRGC as a terror group, were meant to appease Israel. Still with us on the broadcast is Dr. Punsara Amarasinghe. Thank you so much for staying put. We're of course tracking yet another aspect to Iran's ties with Australia, which has seen a downturn over the last couple of days ever since the Australian government has accused the Iranians of anti-Semitic plots in Sydney and Melbourne in October and December 2024 respectively. Where do you think this bilateral partnership is going to head from here? Iran is meanwhile claiming that Canberra's moves, including labelling the IRGC as a terror group, were meant to appease Israel.
Absolutely. I think this is rather hilarious situation as Canberra's move of making Iranian ambassador to Australia persona non grata. unacceptable person is very much connected to what Australia initially proposed of recognizing the Palestinian state in the coming September. And which raged the Israeli reception when Benjamin Netanyahu described Australian Prime Minister as a weak politician. So within few days, Australian intelligence estimated that there were certain shadows behind the anti-Semitic attacks carried out by various parties in Canberra and Melbourne. Whatever the evidence would be from my point of view, yes, to a great extent, it is true to acknowledge that the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, they have a darker history of carrying out coveted operations worldwide, around the world. Especially in Indo-Pacific region, Iranians have they have built up solid connections in Malaysia. They have a large number of Shiite Muslims in Indian subcontinent. They have contacts in Australia. So it could be possibly assumed that there were certain elements played by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, which can be described as the Great Iranian Octopus, because Iran was vehemently humiliated by Tel Aviv's attack in the past few months. So they were looking for a way to take the revenge. This is not something new, because since General Soleimani indoctrinated the doctrine of the proxy warfare, hybrid warfare to Iran, though they have been conducting these kind of operations. They have done it elsewhere, also in certain parts, like in India. Also last year in Sri Lanka, there were concerns about the security of the Israeli tourists in Arugambi. So certain intelligence analysts predicted that there could be certain Iranian infiltration in South Asia as well. So from a strategic point of view, yes, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps might have handed their shadowy hands in these anti-Semitic operations in Melbourne, in Australia, so which finally paved the path for certain repercussions to damage the diplomatic relations between Tehran and Canberra at unprecedented level.
All right, Dr. Amir Singh, thank you so much for taking our time, speaking to us live on NewsX World as we track these very delicate developments. Shifting focus to the Russia-Ukraine war, Russia's defense ministry has announced that its forces have captured Porvoye in the Donetsk region while inflicting heavy losses on Ukrainian forces across Sumy, Kharkiv, Donetsk, Zaporizhia and Dnipropetrovsk over the past 24 hours. Now, Russian strikes have targeted Ukrainian air defense radars, command posts and drone facilities using tactical aircrafts, drones, missiles and artillery. Moscow claims to have hit 149 Ukrainian positions, and it also claims to have shot down 162 drones and multiple guided bombs. Meanwhile, in response, Ukraine's general staff has reported strikes on 6 Russian troop and equipment clusters, 3 artillery systems and 1 crucial facility. Ukrainian air defenses are also claimed to have downed 74 Russian drones. Russia also targeted energy infrastructure, causing widespread power outages, especially in Sumy. Meanwhile, in Kiev, a large-scale overnight drone and missile attack killed 8 people, including children, and injured more than 20. Strikes damaged several districts and forced residents to take shelter in metro stations. The situation remains volatile as both sides are escalating attacks on targets. Joining us on the broadcast is Mr. Glenn Grant, former advisor to the Ukrainian Defense Minister, joining us from Kiev. Thank you so much for taking our time speaking to us on NewsX World. It does not seem that Russia is backing down, even though the US has come forward, proposed a trilateral meeting after Kremlin's rejections yesterday. It seems that Russia has intensified attacks.
Yeah, I mean, I think one has to disassociate anything that comes from the White House with reality, because although Trump and Witkoff and everybody else are trying to talk up peace and trying to talk up what Russia wants, there has been very little change in the Russian stance. In fact, I would almost say no change in the Russian stance, in their desire for the territories and sort of no NATO membership and things like this. These are not changing. And Russia is continuing the attacks as hard as it can. Although, to be fair, there have been 4 or 5 days of quiet. So they've obviously been building up for a large attack over on one day to make it look worse than it probably is. Sad night for Kiev with quite a few people dead and a lot of damage. And Sumy losing power is also not good, although they should be used to it by now because they've been losing power off and on for the last few years.
Indeed, sir, I request you to stay on with us. More news is coming in this time from Germany. Germany has signaled a deepening commitment to European defense and long-term support for Ukraine as its defense minister, Boris Pistorius, has confirmed that Berlin is considering potential contribution to future security guarantees for Ukraine. This is Germany's commitment to European defense and long-term support, as the defense minister has confirmed. They are considering potential contribution for the security guarantees. Let's in fact listen in to his statement.
When it comes to negotiations, I learned in my life quite early that there is one rule you should obey to always. Never put anything off the table before the negotiation started, and never put anything on the table before negotiation started. That would be the biggest mistake we can do. Of course, we consider every contribution we might be able and willing to deliver, to provide for security guarantees for Ukraine, but we don't discuss that now publicly. And another point is, obviously, Germany is the biggest supporter of Ukraine after the US, and our role will become even more important in the months and years to come. So there's nobody I know in the world who will ever doubt our commitment in supporting Ukraine.
The event also marked a major milestone for European defense readiness. The new Rheinmetall facility, which is set to become Europe's largest munition plant, was hailed by NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte as a crucial step towards strengthening the alliance's deterrence and Ukraine's ongoing defense. Here is what he has said.
Secondly, that the Americans said we want to be involved when it comes to security guarantees. These discussions are now ongoing, so we are only 9 days since last Monday. I know that hard work is being done by our senior military people, by foreign ministers, by national security advisors. So, I mean, this is detailed, difficult stuff. You have to hammer it all out. So the fact that 9 days later we have not agreed on everything is not a bad signal. It means that we are working hard, and I'm absolutely sure we will get there, deciding on the security guarantees, what it will look like with American involvement, US involvement, plus, hopefully, as soon as possible, that meeting between Zelensky and Putin.
Meanwhile, construction of the plant began in February 2024. It was backed by a 500 million euros investment. It is expected to produce 25,000 artillery shells this year itself, scaling up to 350,000 rounds annually by 2027. That is not all. Also attending the event was German Vice-Chancellor Lars Klingbeil, who emphasized upon Germany's growing defense role amidst persistent aggression on Russia's side. Meanwhile, Rheinmetall CEO Armin Pepperger has stated that similar production facilities could be replicated in other NATO member states in order to strengthen the alliance's collective readiness. Meanwhile, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz has expressed support for boosting recruitment to the army and expanding Germany's defense industry in order to meet the demands of modern warfare. Germany's dual focus on production as well as political strategy is, of course, shaping up to become very crucial at the moment. Let's listen in to what Mark Rutte had to say.
And others will follow. We see that NATO allies are moving to invest a lot more in defense across Europe at the moment. And that's good. But cash alone, of course, doesn't provide security. Across the alliance, we have already expanded existing production lines and opened many new ones, like this one here in Unterlüß. This is absolutely crucial for our own security and also to keep supporting Ukraine in its fight today and to deter any aggression in the future.
All right, there exactly. We heard what Mark Rutte had to say with regards to the Rheinmetall facility now becoming Europe's largest munitions plant. Meanwhile, still with us on the broadcast is Mr. Glenn Grant. Thank you so much for your patience as we, of course, heard what the European leaders have had to say. How do you view this new plant that has come up, and how will it strengthen Ukraine's defense capabilities, especially as this war does not seem to be abating anytime soon?
I think if we just look at the plant in isolation, I mean, what it will produce will probably only partially reduce the reduction in support from America. So it's good and it's needed and it's important. But actually, we need more. If Europe is in serious thoughts about having to fight Russia in the future, then this one plant is not sufficient. That's absolutely for sure. But I want to go back to one thing you actually mentioned previously, which was the sort of the use of the word considering by the Germans. I mean, Germany is giving a lot to Ukraine. There is no question about it. But its own defense forces are still developing, and they've got a long, long way to go. They don't have enough people to fill their structures, and what they want to do at the moment, they can't do. So considering is a word that covers up a multitude of sins. Europe is still acting and moving, but far, far too slowly.
Apart from Europe, we've also seen Donald Trump threatening Russia for economic sanctions if Putin does not come to the negotiating table. What do you make of these threats? Are these just empty statements that Trump is making?
No, they're worse than empty statements. They're pro-Russian statements. Because every time he threatens, he doesn't do anything at all. And what he's doing is giving Putin more time to capture more ground. And that seems to be the name of the game and the way that Trump is actually working at the moment. His sanctions, threatening sanctions has become a joke. And it's sad because it's not what's needed. Which solidarity is needed at the moment, and we're not getting that solidarity from the US.
All right, sir. Thank you so much for taking our time, sitting with us on NewsX World today, sharing your perspective on these very crucial developments. Meanwhile, viewers, French Prime Minister Bayrou has warned against snap legislative polls, stating that they do not restore stability. He's described France as being akin to a leaky boat due to mounting debt. Bayrou has called for a surprise confidence vote on the 8th of September, which is expected to lose, raising fears of prolonged political as well as financial instability in France. Meanwhile, Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, has given his full support to the prime minister who runs a minority government at this time. Meanwhile, a government spokesperson has confirmed this. Let's listen in.
Alors, oui, le président de la République a évoqué en tout début d'intervention la situation politique et les enjeux auxquels notre pays fait face. Puis après, il est revenu une deuxième fois sur le sujet, apportant son total soutien sur la démarche et le fait qu'il ne faut pas se tromper, il faut qu'on se mette d'accord sur les enjeux, sur la question de la nécessité de retrouver une trajectoire des finances publiques qui soit plus conforme avec l'idée que nous nous faisons de notre souveraineté budgétaire pour nous redonner des capacités d'investir, et qu'il était en parfaite osmose et en parfait accord et en parfait soutien sur les questions de produire plus et de dépenser mieux l'argent public qui a été nécessaire pendant les périodes de crise et qu'il faut maintenant re-rationaliser. Le président de la République a indiqué, je recherche sa formule exacte, qu'il n'y avait ni déni de réalité, ni surexagération de l'état financier de la France. La France est un pays solide, avec une solidité économique, avec des possibilités évidemment financières qui sont importantes, mais il faut reprendre les rênes de notre destinée et que nous le fassions maintenant sur les principes et lors du budget. Je pense que c'est un signal fort que nous envoyons aux marchés financiers pour leur dire nous souhaitons avoir une France qui est encore plus solide.
Meanwhile, Bayrou has also told the TF1 French commercial television network that he does not believe dissolving parliament provides stability and hosts party leaders to discuss the budget, seeking 43.8 billion euros in cuts. Meanwhile, Macron is insisting that there is no denial, no exaggeration of France's finances. Bayrou, meanwhile, has warned that chaos would hurt the youth, and with the far right and left-wing parties against him, he is acknowledging that it's an uphill battle, but serious discussions are necessary before the vote. Let's listen in to what he said.
Oui ou non, est-ce que la situation de la France, la menace de surendettement, est-ce que cette situation mérite qu'on y réponde? Alors on a, c'est très simple, c'est comme un bateau qui aurait une voie d'eau, un trou dans la coque, et la coque se remplit d'eau. Alors il y a des gens qui disent, t'en fais pas Simone, le bateau flotte encore. Et de ce point de vue-là, on est irresponsable. Et on n'est pas irresponsable pour nous, Monsieur Boulot, même pas pour vous, pas pour nous, pas pour notre génération. On est irresponsable pour les plus jeunes des Français. Vous vous rendez compte, on a réussi un truc, je trouve que ça sera dans les livres d'histoire. Le pays est écrasé sous la dette. Et vous savez bien que c'est vrai, vous avez fait 1000...
Meanwhile, joining us on the broadcast is Dr. Satoru Nagao. He's a fellow at the Hudson Institute in Tokyo. Thank you so much for sitting with us live as we discuss these crucial developments coming in from France. Three main opposition parties have opposed the cuts that have been proposed by French Prime Minister Bayrou in their defense. The vote is going to take place very, very soon. Yet, it still seems rather challenging. It still seems that it's an uphill battle for Bayrou, even though Macron is backing him at this point. What can we expect to transpire next month?
There's a possibility that the Prime Minister Bayrou cannot get enough support to continue. So, because currently the French Parliament is divided into three groups, left and right and the middle. To continue as a Prime Minister, Prime Minister Bayrou need to support from two of these three, which is middle and left. But the left will not support him, so that's why he cannot continue to be the Prime Minister. So in this case, President Macron, what can he do? What he can do is, firstly, the new Prime Minister he choose from the middle, or concede to the left and choose someone from the left. In this case, from the middle, there is a possibility that left will not support. So same things will repeat. But from the left, he choose, of course, left will support. So in this case, it rely on the support from the middle. But more easy to persuade compared with the persuade to the left. That is possibilities. Another possibility, the last possibility is, of course, election is a possibility. But under the current situation, right-wing party are very popular. So this means that right-wing party will expand group in the parliament. So that's why the view from the President Macron, he want to avoid such kind of situation because he tried to restrict the power of the right is the purpose of his policy. So that's why there is a possibility, first choice or second choice will be more possibilities than the third choice. That is current possibility. Politics is moving always, so but that is a current possibility. Anyway, the French Parliament, no one can get the majority.
Indeed, aptly put, Dr. Nagao. Thank you so much for taking our time speaking to us on NewsX World. Meanwhile, we're shifting focus towards what's transpired in the United States. We're learning that a candlelight vigil was held at Lyndhurst Park in Minneapolis after an assailant with 3 guns opened fire through stained glass windows into a Catholic church during Mass, killing 2 children and injuring 17 others. Investigators say that the shooter acted alone and did not have any prior criminal history. At least 2 church doors were found barricaded from the outside, indicating premeditation. The shooting ended when the lone suspect, identified as Robin Westman, aged 23, took his own life behind the church. The police have now declined to offer a possible motive for the attack as they are still investigating the matter. Let's in fact hear what the mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Frey, had to say.
Let us take the next step to be a city united in action. I think we've all felt the pain from the families, and we know that as a collective Minneapolis community, what we need to be doing right now is wrapping our arms around them. And what I feel right now is a city that stands up for one another, that does the right thing by their community, and that recognizes that right now, while thoughts and prayers are great, they are not adequate. These children were literally praying at this moment. I'm so grateful to the teachers and the faculty at Annunciation that threw their bodies on top of children. They did the right thing to protect what could have been so many more children dead.
All right, viewers, due to paucity of time, that's all we have for now. Stay tuned for more on NewsX World.